Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Is this working? Yes, it is. Thanks for coming out, nasty night. Fascinating topic we have, soil to brain. For one reason, it seems to represent the paradox of being human. We are relentlessly curious, but the more we know, the less we seem to know. Michael Pollan described this in his book, The Omnivore's Dilemma. In the 19th century, a German chemist called Baron Justus von Liebig discovered that plants need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And the NPK mentality turns soil into a kind of machine. Input, output. And no need to worry about humus. Eureka. Reductionist science, Pollan calls that. And decades ago, in the 1930s, came what was called the Great Humus Controversy, kicked off by an English agronomist called Sir Albert Howard, who linked the health of soil to the health of everything that depended upon it. And he said, history will condemn chemical fertilizer as one of the greatest misfortunes to have befallen agriculture and mankind. Of course, there are others who argue that agriculture itself is an evolutionary disaster and we'd all have been better off if we'd stayed foraging. But let's not go there tonight. Howard wanted to redesign the farm as an imitation of nature. He was a big fan of traditional Indian composting, key figure in the organic movement. 100 years ago we're talking, right? And as we know, NPK mentality won, along with global capitalism. Coincidence? I don't think so. I'm keen to hear from our scientists tonight about what they believe are the results of our depleted soil and whether we can use that knowledge beyond, with all respect, community gardens and individual dietary regimes and expensive organic produce. Brief introductions. Dr. Hadee Thompson-Morrison is a researcher in soil chemistry at the Bioeconomy Science Institute. Her specialty is how essential nutrients and possibly harmful contaminants, copper, zinc, cadmium, accumulate in the soil to be taken up by plants. Pablo Gregorini is Professor of Livestock Production at Lincoln University's Chief Scientist at the Center for Excellence for Designing Future Productive Landscapes. Regenerative farming is what he talks about, increased biodiversity of plants for livestock. Dr. Carolyn Lister, Principal Carolyn Lister. Spelt it wrong, haven't you? Carolyn Lister, Principal Scientist at the Bioeconomy Science Institute, once again expert in food science, specializing in phytochemicals and bioactive compounds in plant-based foods. She provides scientific validation for natural health products. And along the same lines is Julia Rucklidge, Professor of Clinical Psychology at the University of Canterbury, Director of Te Puni Toeora, the Mental Health and Nutrition Research Lab. She's also a fan of Michael Pollan, I think. Aren't we all? You might have heard her 2014 TEDx Christchurch talk, The Surprisingly Dramatic Role of Nutrition in Mental Health. Hadee, 2 minutes, please. Introduction.
So I'm a soil scientist, therefore it's probably not surprising that I think soil is vitally important to us as humans and to life on this planet. Soil underpins 95% of our food production, it's home to 60% of the world's biodiversity, And to give some context to what I'll talk about, as Kim mentioned, in my research, I look at trace elements. So these are elements that occur in really small concentrations in the environment, but they have a disproportionately large effect on organisms and processes around them. Now, these elements can be essential, like copper and zinc. We need these. We call these micronutrients. These elements can also be non-essential, things like cadmium and lead, and we can call these contaminants. But even micronutrients can become contaminants if we put too many of them in a place where we don't want them. We deal with toxicity. It starts to negatively affect life around them. Conversely, when we don't have enough micronutrients, we have issues of deficiency. Life starts to suffer because it relies on these micronutrients. And so when it comes to trace elements, micronutrients, humans get most of these from soil through our food. So the state of our soils and of the micronutrients in our soils is really important for us as humans and for our health. So the behaviour of micronutrients in soils is quite complex, and this can make managing our agricultural systems quite complicated and quite challenging. Our soils are very diverse, particularly in New Zealand, and micronutrients behave differently in different soils. So often it can be easier, maybe cheaper, to focus on nutrition in other parts of the food supply chain, and that's fine. But if we really focus on soils, if we know what's happening within them, if we understand the processes and we manage them correctly, we start step one, the foundation of our food supply system, robustly. We set ourselves up with a resilient and an efficient system. So to recap, soils, important, yes. Managing soils and managing micronutrients in soils is complex, but if we do this right, we set ourselves up with a good foundation for our agricultural systems, for our trade as an agricultural nation, and for our health through our food.
Thank you. Pablo.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to be that technical, but I'm just a new appointee of the UN Global Economic Development Commission. I'm the high-level ambassador and chairman of the Agricultural Systems, Grazing Lands, Ecology and Management. So let me start. Te toto te tangata he kai, te oranga o te tangata he whenua, ko o te whenua, ko o. While food provides the blood in our vein, our health is drawn from the health of our land. I am the land, and the land is me. We are members of nature's community. What we do to them, we do to ourselves. Only by nurturing them can we nurture ourselves, and by healing them, we can heal ourselves. Ultimately, agricultural products reflect the history of our landscapes, our foodscapes, and agricultural systems manifested through soil, plant, chemistry, animal chemistry, and thereby our health and the health of our planet. My teams locally and internationally has been investigating not only how ruminants, wild and domesticated, graze around grasslands and rangelands, but lately focusing on sustainability of agricultural systems and the continuum of soil, plant, animal, population dynamics, and human health, as well as how phytochemistry and culture link palettes of humans and herbivores with landscapes in view of design and creation of healthscapes. My team and I are the only ones and the first in the world here at Lincoln University to run cause and effect clinical trials with humans that demonstrate that our health reflects the way we farm.
Carolyn.
Thank you. Nutrition shapes brain health in profound ways. It quite literally builds the brain, fuels it, and determines how well the brain copes under pressure. When diets are diverse and rich in key nutrients, and for the brain we're talking about things like omega-3 fatty acids, B vitamins and essential minerals, as well as the phytochemicals that are present in plants, we see measurable gains in focus, in our mood and our resilience. But when those nutrients are lacking, the brain struggles, even if we're getting sufficient calories. But nutrition doesn't begin on our plates, it begins in the soil. So if the quality of the soil is lacking, so the food we eat is lacking in nutrients, and the nutrient density of our foods decline. Along with the way that we grow our food, things like plant breeding and food processing have focused on things like yield, flavour, convenience and shelf life. And that's often at the detriment of nutritional value and the compounds our brains depend on. There's another invisible layer to the story as well, and that's about the role that microbes play in the diversity. We hear about the gut microbiome, but there's also the soil microbiome and the microbiome of the plants. And these impact the way the plant uptakes nutrients that get into the food, but also how our bodies uptake nutrients. We really face a paradox in that food's abundant, yet many of us are not getting the nutrients that we need for good brain health. In New Zealand, we're also making decisions on very outdated information. The last National Nutrition Survey was in 2008, and our food systems shifted a lot since then. So we don't actually know what the nutritional status of our population is, and those flow-on effects for brain health. So I'd just like to sum up with 3 key things that really matter: how our food is grown or produced, and a need to shift towards more nutrient-dense food rather than a focus on yield or calories. We also need to rethink our physical connection to real food and soil, and particularly recognising that role of the microbiome. And finally, what we really eat as a whole, especially considering dietary diversity. If we're serious about supporting brain health, we need to think beyond individual diets and ask the bigger question: what kind of food system do we want for New Zealand and its future? And that begins in the soil. Thank you.
Julia.
Kia ora koutou. This is probably no surprise to you, but we're in the middle of a mental health crisis in Aotearoa. Just as an example, more than half of New Zealanders aged 15 to 24 are struggling with anxiety and or depression. And there's been a doubling in the number of people who are self-identifying with severe distress since 2016. So in the 1990s, when I was doing my PhD, I learned about some families in southern Alberta, Canada, who were using vitamins and minerals in a pill form to treat really serious psychiatric conditions, things like bipolar disorder, depression, psychosis. Now, my clinical training as a psychologist had taught me that nutrition was essentially irrelevant to brain health. And that's the sort of typical and standard education that many health professionals get, both here in New Zealand as well as globally. Yet early findings showed people getting well and staying well with micronutrients. So I moved to New Zealand and I decided to study them. As an academic, we need to study ideas even if they contravene the current way of thinking. So for nearly 2 decades, I've run placebo-controlled trials showing that when you give the brain the extra micronutrients it needs, children, teens, and adults become calmer, less moody, less irritable, less suicidal, more focused, and more resilient to stress and trauma. Even people with good diets can benefit. And these findings have been replicated overseas. But ultimately, my research is proof of principle that there's something going wrong with the food environment. But none of this should surprise us because the brain is a biological organ. It needs raw materials to function, to make neurotransmitters, to help the mitochondria make ATP, to keep our DNA healthy. And right now, there is a mismatch between our food environment and our brain's metabolic needs, a kind of hidden brain hunger. So problems that we might identify as psychological or behavioral may instead, in some cases, reflect nutrient insufficiency. But here's the part that remains invisible in our public conversation. We cannot build healthy brains on nutrient-poor food, whether because it is ultra-processed or because the food is grown in ways that make it nutrient-depleted. But our dominant medical model approach ignores the upstream cause. We are treating symptoms while overlooking the foundations. So if we are serious as a nation about reversing our current mental health crisis, we must rebuild soil health, protect food quality, and treat nutrition as fundamental to mental health care. Better soil, better food, better guts, and a better brain.
Okay. So this is a question for anybody who wants to answer it. I'm worried about the nostalgia trap. And I think that in New Zealand we're particularly vulnerable to it at the moment because things are shit, right? How do we know that our food, non-processed food, ordinary food that we grow is more devoid of nutrients than in the past? I want to be sure that we're not blaming something too quickly. Any answers, please?
Well, the only way to know is to measure.
Carolyn says we don't know the nutritional status. We haven't
Of
got
the
records.
food?
We know some aspects of the composition of the food, but then we don't know what individuals are eating to know whether they're getting enough
we're
of
blaming the
nutrients.
soil and we're blaming the food. How do we know it's not microplastics that are interfering with the absorption of nutrients?
I thought you had another discussion, or the previous one was about plastics, right? I did my homework.
I don't want to blame the wrong villain here.
No, there is no need to blame about everything. I think, like she said, we need to measure those sort of things or how the food is composed and the compounds that the food has got. There are clear examples that advances in food production have denuded phytochemicals that are related to human health, not only with grasses and legumes, but also with tomatoes, for example. Now a tomato is sweet and it's related to two biochemicals components, right? Before, 50 years ago, tomatoes were sweet, but that sweetness or that flavor, not taste, was due to 200 phytochemicals that not only provide that flavor, taste and aroma, but also other properties that for the sake of yield, we have lost, or for the sake of shelf life, we have lost, right? And that's not only tomatoes, frutillas, to the ones that speak Spanish, strawberries, bananas, ryegrass, alfalfa, lucerne, and other things. So now the kids eat gummy bears, thinking that they're eating apples. Before we were eating an apple, right? Okay, that's
But
fine.
even when we eat the apple, Pablo, you're
The
saying...
apple is still denuded as well as compared to previous varieties of apples.
So, we have to eat the apple and take nutritional supplements.
I am not here to supplement the world, Kim.
Are you sure?
I think so. But I think in some cases, and particularly now, because we are identifying that the food is nutrient depleted, that in some cases, some people are needing more than what they can get out of their food.
So are you looking at the
even
people?
a healthy diet.
Have you tested the apple and you've said this apple is more devoid of nutrients than it was 20 years ago?
I personally don't do that as a psychologist, but I think that some of the other panel members
You're
might
convinced
test
that this is the
apple.
case?
They've tested
But
wheat.
they have been tested, and we know they're more depleted, but do you know that more specifically?
They've looked at certain crops. They've looked at wheat in particular. There was a study out of the UK recently. They have field trials there that have stretched back nearly 200 years. They also collected archived wheat samples that had been grown all around the world. And about 50 years ago, they introduced new varieties of wheat. These were dwarf varieties. They produce a lot more grain, so a lot more food, basically.
Oh.
Yeah. They tested the grain samples and they found that with the introduction of these dwarf varieties, yes, they were getting more yield, but they were containing less micronutrients, so less zinc in particular was a big one there. That's one crop and one micronutrient. I don't know about others, but definitely within our staple crops.
And there have been other studies that have shown, particularly with that focus on yield, the nutrients are diluted. In some cases, they're growing so fast, they haven't got as long to take up the nutrients from the soil. Some crops are bigger, a lot of the nutrients in the skin, so producing a bigger apple, you've got less skin, to volume, so you haven't got as much of the, increased nutrients in that skin relative to the size of the apple.
The skin's the important bit.
In a lot of crops it is. It varies depending on the nutrient, but in some cases it is.
All right.
And so sometimes in our processing of food, we're stripping away the parts of the fruit that have the higher amounts of nutrients as well.
So,
it's complex.
But those are bland. And I'm a carnivore. And we tested meat, venison, beef, lamb coming from the status quo system versus a more biodiversified systems. And we proved that by biodiversifying the systems, we increase. And I don't want to talk about nutrient density. We should talk about not only the density, but the richness and the functionality of those nutrients. A glass of sugar is as dense as anything else. We need not only sugar, but we need other nutrients to fulfill the desires and needs of our brain. But we have tested meats and milk and even yogurt, right, that you've seen the yogurt around. And we have seen that we can not only increase the amount of nutrients that are associated to human health, but the functionality of those. And we went further with clinical human trials, and we have proved that those nutrients are shown in our blood.
So, we're never going to repair all the soils of the world.
Why not?
Why not? You tell me. Why? How can you? I mean, you and I were talking earlier about the Mongolian nomads, as you do. And there's no way that you are going to return them to the way of life that they had 100 years ago.
There is no need to return.
Right.
There is no return. We are moving forward. There is no need to talk about...
You see, this is the idea. Regenerative agriculture
but we don't need
is
to...
perceived as going backwards.
but we don't need to talk about regenerative agriculture. What are we regenerating? We need to talk about agroecological science that help us to co-evolve with these our systems that need more functional nutrients and nutrient-rich food. What is regenerative agriculture? What is conventional agriculture? Do we really care about wasting time on defining that? Or do we want to feed our brain with systems that actually provide health?
But Kim, what is wrong with going back to something that actually worked? Why? We've recognized now that adding these things, that is chemicals to our food, growing them in a certain way, is making us sick. And our data is simply proof of principle. When you add those vitamins back in and you just give them in a pill form, we've proven over and over again that we improve people's mental health. So why not go back?
All right, what about the proposition that we've got, maybe 8 billion people to feed on the planet? We cannot grow nutritionally rich food for all those people.
Why not? I mean, we waste so much
Because
food.
the soil's burning away and it's nutritionally deficient. Do you think we can?
I think, well, I'd look over to the panel over there around, can we replenish the soil? But as far as I know, I think we do know how to do that. I sure hope so.
You don't see a problem? Because my answer is keep feeding people the nutritionally deficient food and give them the pill to help with what they're missing out on. What is your problem?
But I really think, Julia is right. We don't need to live in the lie that industrial agriculture feed the world. It doesn't. That FAO data, 70–80% of the population of the world live off small farms, 2 less hectares run by women. That's agriculture. So back into that reality and going to that, so yes, we can do it. We are doing it here at Lincoln University. We can improve the soil, increase yields, and get healthier food.
For as
Now, in a romantic view of solving the world problem, that's a different story.
right.
We
I
should
guess
drink more
that's what I'm
wine.
thinking of, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can't do both. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we can do both.
You can do both.
Yeah.
You can improve the health of the soil and still feed people. When you start to learn, I mean, again, this is, I'm not the soil scientist here, I'm the psychologist. But I've learned over the years from having done the research that I've been doing that if you switch over from away from chemical fertilizers towards regenerative agriculture, you can maintain your yield and have healthier plants. So it is possible. And New Zealand is a great place to be doing this. In fact, we have an incredible produce. What is probably the most saddest thing for me, as someone who has been working in this mental health crisis for 20 years or more, is that we export our amazing food and we import crap. 23%, sorry to use that word, ultra-processed products. 23% of our imports are ultra-processed products based on data that came out of the University of Auckland last week. So that we should all be ashamed of that because we should be feeding ourselves first, our tamariki first, who in places like Napier where you've got this incredible produce and there's 20% of them are food insecure.
Right, and they're closing down the frozen pea factories.
And peas are great nutrition.
I mean, whereas I don't even begin to understand this. I think the whole thing is insane. Anybody got any views on that, by the way? Why is it that in New Zealand, where we're extremely good at growing, albeit nutritionally deficient peas?
It's not all nutritionally deficient.
Never, are they not?
Some of them aren't. I mean, there's a spectrum. And so there are some crops that are still very rich in a whole range of nutrients, and peas is actually one of them that's particularly
Because they're
good.
quite good at sucking up what they need.
Yeah.
Right.
So they're a storage organ, so
All
they've
right.
got...
So some overseas investor decides that they can't be bothered anymore, and we all go, oh, all right then. I mean, what? Is there not something that can be done? Do you people know? Are you... Does anybody know? I'm just stressed by this. No. No ideas whatsoever. Well, what can I say?
Cultural shift than it is a soil science. Shifting personas and people's perspective of what good is, rather than just fixing the soil.
I fully agree with you. I think we've been being quite myopic to look at the soil by itself. It's the product of the whole system, which includes us. So we are part of that. We are not detached to that because we are that. So focusing in the soil by itself could be a waste of time. We should focus at the whole things and the interactions of the whole components of the systems. And that is the real holistic approach.
And
Or do we believe that just because we increase carbon in the soil, we are going to solve hunger or mental issues?
And for the last 100 years, we've taken a very reductionist approach to mental health. We've seen it as being this one molecule will give you this selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and that's going to solve your depression, or something that manipulates dopamine. Whereas and when it comes to the nutrients, and why nutrients I think have had such a bad rap around supplements, is that we studied them as a single nutrient. And if you look at the biology, that's not how it works. Chemical A to chemical B, tryptophan to serotonin, it uses enzymes, it needs cofactors, not just one. It needs a whole bunch of different cofactors of minerals and vitamins. And yet we continue to perpetuate the idea that we should just, what is the magic nutrient I should take? I get asked that all the time.
So
You
please-
asked it to me, I think.
Tell me.
Magnesium.
That's right.
What's the single? Yes.
Just explain how you know what the bunch of micronutrients are that will make a difference.
Yeah, so that's not a psychologist to answer that, because that's understanding what it is that an animal needs. So we need the essential nutrients, and there's about 15 vitamins, about 15 minerals, which would be seen as essential, plus or minus. And so that's well established around what, and Hadee talked about that, around the essential nutrients versus non-essential nutrients. That's really well known. And so, but we continue to think we just need one or two of them.
No,
and that will
forget
correct
that.
it.
I want the bunch of them.
Sure.
But how do you know? How do you know what the bunch is?
Yes, because we've known that about human biology. We know what our brain and our bodies need to function.
And are we all similar?
I believe we are.
Like I come to you with psychosis.
Right. Our nutritional needs may be different. We all need nutrients, but our nutritional needs may be different depending on where we are in our life stage. So, for example, teenagers, having just parented a couple of them, their brains are undergoing reconstruction is a simple way to think about it. And so they are building new neurons. They are building new connections from neuron to a neuron. And so that process is really nutrient dependent. If you're under a lot of stress, like people in Christchurch after the earthquakes, their nutritional needs were higher than people in Auckland. So, well, I don't know. I mean, and right now with the floods, that's going to make a difference in terms of people's nutritional needs. As we get older, our nutritional needs are different. If you're pregnant, your nutritional needs are different. But we still need the same nutrients, I think, is what I'm trying to say. So
But we still assume we're going to get those from eating a healthy diet. But according to all you guys, there is probably no such thing as what we used to know as a healthy diet, because the food is not as healthy anymore, because the soil is not as healthy anymore.
It's not as simple as that, because we're eating a lot more processed foods versus, traditional diets.
Yeah, but forget the ultra-processed food, which we all know is bad for us. Ordinary food.
Yeah,
we
well,
are still not getting the nutrients we should be getting from the broccoli and the potato and the silver beet.
That's example that I just gave. You eat a tomato, a bloom variety, 50 years old, and now, and you get the same orosensorial experience. Literally, you wouldn't notice the difference, but you get more nutrition in the old variety. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say rather than it's not healthy anymore, we'd say, well, it could be healthier.
So we have our nutrients that are essential for life, and we know that if we're not getting sufficient, we'll get deficiencies. What we're starting to understand is there's all these other phytochemicals in our produce that deliver the extra things beyond just normal functioning, and they really help to our well-being. And it's some of those that are often reduced because some of them, taste-wise, they're a bit more astringent, or they give different colours and we want more uniformity. So sometimes those things have changed with plant breeding. So, and again, size of our produce can dilute out some of those phytochemicals.
And it's right. When you get diets, not only for humans, but cows in our case, in the Integral Health Farm, we've shown that by increasing phytochemistry of what the cows eat, not only they produce more, but they eat less.
If you give them a smorgasbord of plants.
You can give it a salad bar or a mixed salad, better a salad bar.
Yeah.
Because you have the opportunity to choose.
Yeah.
And we have proven that choice provides a better well-being, if you like. I'm not going to say they're happier, but they have the option to choose.
Eat what they need.
Yeah, and they can express their own individuality there. And the interesting thing is when we proved that with lambs, I say, yeah, that's cool. They produce more, they eat less, they are healthier. Even from the get-go of life, right, fetuses were less stressed. And the interesting, the same metabolite, we find it in people when they were eating those lambs. And metabolite that indicate faster nutrient absorption. So we can reduce incidental augmentation that is happening in our status quo farm systems, that animals or even people, because they don't get those special things, they keep eating without knowing to supplement themselves with other nutrients that they will never be there. We have that data here.
And it's completely convincing for you.
Yeah, well, it's published. Yeah. Blame the reviewers, not me. But I'm biased because I'm part of that. I'm biased.
I mean,
So-
it's all a very nice story, right? But I want to know what we can do about it. I mean, it's all very well to wring our hands and say things used to be better and now they're not, and we need better soils. But what? We're part of a global economy now. That's why we can't have frozen peas anymore. And that's why we need the bulk. That's why we need bulk dairy.
Well, we can choose where we put our agricultural systems. We have really diverse soils, as I mentioned. Soils are not the same. People think that they are. They look down, they see this brown stuff that they walk on. They're so different, particularly in New Zealand. And soils,
That doesn't matter.
but they can be
because
suited
dairy
to
is
different
where
land
the money
uses.
is.
Yeah.
To hell with the peas. Nobody wants the peas anymore. We're going to put cows there.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
cares about your soils.
No, they don't. So please listen to me. Care about soils.
But when you tell them, okay, if you care about the soil, you can be more profitable. You can
Can you,
produce.
though?
Yes, you can. Yeah,
How?
yeah,
Make the link. How?
yeah. By farming in a different way.
Somebody who's importing our milk from America,
Yeah.
they're going to say, no, hang on a minute, no, they're not.
Well, that's the American problem, not ours.
No, it's our problem.
I know, I know, but the how, yeah, there's plenty of sciences of how, and this is not regen science or conventional science, it's simple agronomy and soil science and all of that. We can do it, but caring about the soil, it's not like if you care about the soil, all of a sudden you need to lose money because, no, we can do both. We can care about the soil, we can produce more, we can be more profitable. So the
If
evidence
that's
is
the
there.
case, why for the last 100 years have we been going in the other direction?
Ask Julia, she's a psychologist.
But the consumers have often been driven by price and getting something cheap, and they don't seem to
Damn those consumers.
care
You
about...
know? I mean, why haven't they got shitloads of money to distribute to us when we're giving them such great... Do you know, this is capitalism. This is the world we are living in. We cannot sit around and say, let us produce really delicious things that everybody will want. Nobody can afford it.
But part of it, isn't it, is the fiscal levers that govern the way...
Oh, capitalism!
But at some point, you know, when you get on the airplane that you got, I think they said to you when you flew down, I assume they said something about putting on your mask first before we put on the mask of our children. And what we're doing right now here is that we aren't doing that. We're not looking after ourselves before export. And that simply has to do with the fiscal levers that influence the growers. They're going to export because that's how they make the money.
Yep.
But we can change that because we're all paying for
How?
it.
How?
Michael
How?
Pollan said there's no such thing as cheap food. Cheap food is an illusion.
Yeah.
If you don't pay for it at the supermarket, you will pay for it in
The
your
only
health.
people who say
So
cheap
we are-
food is an illusion are the people who can afford to pay for
Well,
more
then
expensive food.
this is a solvable problem because we are paying billions for our healthcare system. It is broken because we all have chronic disease. And so we seem to be happily munching that up and thinking that that's okay, let's all get sick and let's pay for the hospitals. But that doesn't make sense. It does, because you're going to save way more money if we had some kind of a government that liked preventative medicine. That would be nice.
It would be nice. It would also call for a longer than 3-year tour.
Yeah.
That's solvable.
You know, I mean, we're all talking about some kind of utopia where everybody would be sensible and would do the reasonable thing. But clearly, we are not living in those times. So, you know, you shake your head. What can be done?
Well, I mean, part of it is educating people too to make the right choices. And think about the long-term, you know, consequences. I mean, a lot of people
How's
don't
the
understand.
education going so far?
Not great, but we also need to. It is a long-term game, and there's a lot of elements to it.
So many elements, right?
Yeah.
You know, there are so many things that you have, so many balls that you have to get in the holes all at the same time.
And that's the way it is. We can't fix a computer with a hammer. Now, we even from a farming point of view, we need to respond to multiple needs, demands, and pressure, and judgment.
Hadee,
So we cannot focus on one single thing. It's not easy. That's
Hadee-
why we not only need to inform, but form people.
Hadee, do you think, what would be the first thing you would do to make a difference?
Change where we put some of our land uses. So we farm soils where it's convenient for us, not where they're well suited to certain agricultural systems. There's soils that I personally think probably should never be farmed on, yet they are. And then
Such
there's
as?
really rich braid plains of rivers where nutrients can leach straight into them, basically. Then we have soils that are really rich and fertile. They might be really well suited. They might contain a lot of nutrients, and we don't really use those that efficiently at all.
Why? What are we doing with those?
Build on them.
Yeah.
Urinate them.
You know, and there will be people in this room who've made decisions about living, building on soil that would be better put to growing things in, right? Whose problem is it? It's like as soon as you know the right thing to do, some idiot is doing the other thing. What would you do, Pablo, to make a
Well,
difference?
keep doing things.
Get out of your ivory tower.
Thank you. Being a short Latin American with an accent is really hard to do that. But, well, I think the first we need to do is to have these conversations, to establish a dialogue rather than a discussion, to show and discuss data, acknowledge that nobody's right. We all want the same. Who doesn't want to be healthy?
Oh, stop it.
Well,
That's a ridiculous question, isn't it?
who doesn't want to make money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to make money?
Yeah, but we can do both things at the same time.
Can we?
Yes, we
In
can.
that case, why aren't we?
Ask Julia.
Poor Julia. She gets the hard questions right at the end. What would you do, Carolyn? The first thing you would do to make a difference?
I think we need to take a much more integrated approach as a country to thinking about our whole food system, and there's a lot of elements to that, and a lot of diverse thinking that needs to be brought together.
Oh, yeah.
I know it sounds boring, but
No,
that's the...
no, it doesn't sound boring. It just sounds unachievable.
But
You
someone's
know,
got
we
to...
are run by people with so little imagination. And this calls for a huge amount of imagination, right?
Well, and it needs long-term thinking. It's
Oh.
not a quick fix, and this is part of our problem. And again, you know, touching on National Nutrition Survey, the government's not interested in investing in that because it's not a short-term fix.
Well, no, and some other bastard will get the credit down the line.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know how we solve this.
Uh-oh.
Julia. Julia.
Right. I don't think you're going to like any of my answers, and I think you're going to argue, but I'll give it a go anyway.
It's my job.
I think we can't separate out some things that have happened, and one is the increasing consumption of ultra-processed foods, and also the depletion in the nutrients in the real whole foods. And if we look at it ourselves as a country, half of our calories are coming from ultra-processed products. And we know those are nutrient poor. We can measure that. And the other challenge of them is not just that they're nutrient poor, but they have sugar in them, and they have all these additives. They're really wreaking havoc with
Small question.
Okay.
Do they remove nutrients from them in order to add the horrible bits?
They can.
But why
yes.
do that?
It seems crazy, doesn't it? But if you remove, say, for example, the fat, in doing that, you're removing nutrients because oftentimes the nutrients might be held in fat. So that might be one example of why you would end up removing the nutrients.
Cheap.
Well, they're as cheap food is.
I know.
Yeah.
But is one of the things that we could do if we wanted to take it seriously, and other nations have done this, is that they've looked at food packaging labels properly, not the health star rating system, because that doesn't make any sense. You can get a 4-star rating by being a cardboard box. So low in fat, low in sugar, low in salt, and low in calories. But that doesn't mean you need to eat it. So our system, our way of educating people is broken. But in places, I think in South America, they have skulls and bones on them, and really letting you know, this is ultra-processed.
Like cigarettes.
Like cigarettes, exactly. And that's a good example. Cigarettes, in order to get people to stop smoking, what we did to get people to stop smoking, it wasn't telling them that it was killing them. It was raising taxes and preventing them from being able to smoke in the first place.
Well, actually, it was pricing them off the market.
Exactly. So ultra-processed foods could be priced out of the market too. Ultra-processed foods is the 21st century of the cigarettes. There is not a single study that's showing it's helping us. They're harming us. So why do we continue to think that that's an okay way to feed
I don't know.
kids?
What is the answer?
Then you've got to change the fiscal levers
No, but
on it.
okay, but is it the lobbying? Is it the lobby group that's stopping that happening?
I believe that the food industry is incredibly powerful.
I mean, they can't even put a tax on sugary drinks.
Well, they have in the UK, they have done it in other countries,
here.
and they have been able to be successful. It doesn't mean that New Zealand can't do that.
No, but they won't.
But no, yes they can, because New Zealand was the first country in the world that got women the vote. If we can get women the vote, we can do anything.
Have you met David Seymour?
Funnily enough, he phoned me one day. And yeah, it didn't go well. And I had my 30 seconds with David Seymour, and I was trying to change the way supplements are regulated in this country, and it's a really simple solution. I won't go into the details of that. But he said, well, you know, have you ever watched Yes, Minister? Which indicated to me that he's run by the bureaucrats. And I said to him, if you cannot change the B12 level in this country, then what can I expect of you as the third person in line to be Prime Minister? He didn't have much to say. But these are solvable problems, I think.
The trials that you did involved something like 13 pills a day.
12, yeah.
12, 13 pills a day.
Yep.
I mean, that's not just taking a vitamin C tab. That's heavy-duty supplements, right?
It's taking the broad range, so it's not just taking vitamin C, but Kim, if you've ever seen a calcium pill, you'll know it's bulky. But that's just a calcium pill. So if you think about meeting the requirements of all of those essential minerals, it starts to get bulky very quickly, and that is why it's 12 pills a day. It's because the supplements that you purchase in the supermarket are so low in the minerals, you can get it all fit into one.
The conventional wisdom is that by far the majority of dietary supplements just give you expensive urine.
Some of them. They can. Yes, they can. Absolutely. And
Are you saying that that's not the case?
Well, That is not the case in our research. That could be the case with supplements that you purchase in the supermarket that are much, much lower. But the fact that we've shown repeatedly better than placebo is proof that it's not expensive urine. It's having a biological effect. The fact that we've seen an increase in microbiome diversity, we've seen reduction in inflammation, we've seen reduction in homocysteine, we see the nutrient levels go up, we've seen changes in the imaging, and we've seen methylation changes in the DNA. All of that point to the fact that we've had a biological effect on the people who have been involved in our studies. All of those things that I've just said are all generally seen as good things to see change.
All right.
So I'd say that's the expensive urine story has been disproven by us and others around the world.
Only
when
if-
it comes to some formulas, yeah.
Yeah, only if people have access to the kind of supplements that you're advocating.
Yes.
And you're saying that they haven't got easy access to those.
Well, they don't because of our government legislation on nutrient supplements is so outdated.
And the government is probably concerned that they might be over-promising and under-delivering.
No, I don't think that that's necessarily their problem at all. I think that it's just they have other priorities, and supplements is not their priority.
I mean, supplements have a certain reputation of being
They
quackish.
do, and I know that you hold that opinion sometimes.
And there are ones that
There are, yes.
There's plenty of snake oil, salesmen out there who are selling supplements that aren't of any quality, and they're making money.
That's right.
So, yeah, and I mean, there's a big difference, as you say, in the quality
That's
of
right.
supplements.
So you would need to be careful about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the thing, if a supplement is proven to be efficacious in New Zealand, what MedSafe does is they take it off the market because it then no longer meets the criteria of what a supplement is allowed to do. A supplement in New Zealand is not allowed to prevent or cure disease. That's by law.
Not allowed to claim to.
Not allowed to claim to. But why would we live in a place where you can't claim that an orange can treat scurvy? Because a food can't have a treatment claim either. So how did it happen that the word therapeutic purpose has been ring-fenced by the pharmaceutical industry and nothing else can get in? And as soon as something's proven to be efficacious, which is what we've shown, it actually becomes more difficult to access.
That is a very, very interesting debate within the natural health supplement.
Yeah.
I know. I'm not sure we'll be able to solve that tonight.
It is a tricky one, yeah. Great.
And I mean, the current government retracted what was going to be a change in legislation in that space.
Yeah.
And we've taken us back to 1985 legislation.
Mm-hmm.
And thereby turned us all into nutrient deficient.
Well, we can't trust the nutrient supplements that are on the market often because there's not necessarily quality control on them.
But the government also prevents you from being able to take nutrients at a dose that's actually going to make a difference. So vitamin D, for example, the research is clear that we should be getting around 3,000 IUs a day, but a supplement can only have 1,000. No one is allowed to tell you that, though. So the person who's selling the vitamin D can't say, well, just take 3. They're not allowed to tell you that. And so the only way you're going to learn that is through, I guess, Googling it or talking to some expert who might actually know something about it.
Well, the vitamin D is mainly from sunlight, is it not?
Well, you do get vitamin D from sunlight, but at as we approach the winter months, you're not going to get any vitamin D unless you go outside naked for 20 minutes in the middle of the day.
Doing my best. So the whole world would be deficient in vitamin D
Well, you can store
at certain
it.
seasons, presumably.
You can store your vitamin D. So if you get a sufficient amount in the summer, then it can be possible to have an adequate amount, and including from your food, though. We do
Right.
get vitamin D from our food as
You
well.
do? All right. So how much, in your view, is soil to blame for the nutritional deficiencies, or is lifestyle to blame?
Yeah, I think they're both. They really are both. So we know that the soil is deficient, or that the agricultural processes like tilling can influence the microbiome of the soil, and therefore it's more difficult for the plant to get access to the nutrients because the microbiome has been disrupted. So then the nutrients don't get taken up into the plant, is my understanding. Am I right? So did I say, yeah, good, okay. Phew, that was the psychologist. So yes, that's an important one, but our lifestyle absolutely is it's the low-hanging fruit, is that we reduce our consumption of ultra-processed foods, but we need to figure out a way of making the real whole foods something that's we can afford. There are ways of doing that: growing your own food, buying in season. Beans, lentils, chickpeas. These are really nutrient rich foods.
Are they though?
They are.
Doesn't it depend on what they're grown in? How can we rely on lentils and chickpeas anymore?
Anyways, we cannot rely on a lot of lettuces and lentils and all of that because we need to eat some animals as well. But independently,
Welcome to my pantry.
Independently of that, the whole point is diversify, create redundancy in the system.
No, but
we're
just
going
a valid,
back to-
stop. Valid question. What makes you think that chickpeas and lentils are any more nutritious than anything else, given that they're probably grown in nutrient-deficient soil?
Well, they're going to be better choices than ultra-processed products. They're a
No,
better
that's not
choice.
the competition.
That is the competition. That is the competition.
Is it?
It is.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on, Pablo. As you were.
Just eat a gram of cow liver and that should suffice. A cow, from an essential nutrients from a human point of
Depends
of
what
view.
your cow's eating.
Yes, of course. But in general, 1 gram of a liver of a ruminant is equivalent to half a kilo of oranges.
Yes.
Or I don't know how many lettuces we can grow in there.
You're clearly not in favour of vegetarianism.
No, don't get me wrong. I think, and I'm not going to get into the discussion
No,
of
no.
vegetarian or not. I think we should have a diverse diet. To me, eating a sentient being, an animal, although I can't kill them, it is not bad.
You
Because-
can't kill them?
No, I can't.
Oh,
No, I can eat them and process
yes.
them.
We used to call
Quite
it
a lot,
hypocrisy.
but,
What do you call it now?
No, hypocrisy as well. Yeah, but I think what we should promote is a diversity of diet, diversity of systems, because we cannot live on landscapes governed by one single thing, plants. Plants need animals as animals need plants.
Right.
Worms need us later on in our stay on Earth.
And there is no, we all know the wrongness of growing one thing too much. And yet, thanks to capitalism, thanks to the exigencies of the market, this is what we continue to do. And I can't see an end to that. No matter how many scientific studies you pull out to say that the soil is deficient, the crop is deficient, and it's vulnerable to all sorts of illnesses because it's a monocultivar.
Yeah, and that's why, reiterate what I was saying, we need to establish dialogue. We need to keep talking. We got science that can support our arguments. So the best thing to do is just to keep talking about it and show facts with bias or unbiased science.
Hadee,
So if we don't establish that, if we don't ask the question, do you know? Have you tried?
Hadee,
We never go.
They do say that New Zealand soils are automatically everywhere deficient in certain things. Selenium is one thing. Is that right?
So they're low in selenium and iodine. Most of them are. There's actually areas in New Zealand where we have a lot, and we probably shouldn't grow food there, very small areas.
Like a lot
But-
of selenium, did you
Yes,
say?
yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
too much selenium.
Too much. Well, it's natural, so is it too much? It's there naturally. But it's interesting when you talk about deficiencies, actually, because some of our soils have a lot of these micronutrients in them. They're just not accessible. Like I said, they change their behaviour in soils. They kind of behave in really complex ways. In different soils, they behave differently, and quite often they're just not accessible to plants. And I think a lot of the deficiencies that we see in our food actually, that study that I talked about that looked at wheat samples from all around the world, they also measured the soils that, from that 200-year field trial. They found that, yes, the plants were deficient in zinc, but the soils were not. There was actually a lot of zinc in those soils, and it was in forms that was bioavailable to those plants. The plants just couldn't get it, and the only thing they can attribute that to is something to do with the plant genetics, because they're now grown for yield instead of nutrition.
So if they
That's the example of the grass and the tomato.
if they genetically manipulated the crops, they would be able to absorb the zinc.
If they I do not know the answer to that question.
So even if we got soil that was nutritionally tip-top, it would not guarantee that the plants would be able to absorb what they needed to absorb.
Well, for that plant, it's absorbing what that plant needs.
Well, yeah.
But they're not the plants that we had 50 years ago that naturally took up more and gave us the levels that we need.
Did they, though?
I think they did. Caroline, you probably know more. Sorry, Carolyn.
I mean, no, did they?
We throw the ball there.
What are we comparing now with?
And this is one of the challenges, is that, you know, sometimes things weren't measured, analytical methods have changed over time, and so we're not necessarily comparing like with like, and it makes it very difficult to go back to historical data and say how it compares to this. So there are challenges there, and it does take a long-term time to really study all these things because they're complex systems. And in addition to the amount of mineral in the soil, you know, we've mentioned about the microbiome, so those bacteria around the roots of the plant are sometimes assisting with uptake of those minerals into the plant. They may have changed as well because of agricultural practices have changed the whole bacteria in the soil. So it's not, I mean, I liken some of these things to an orchestra, and you've got to have
many movable parts,
right. And you can't just put it down to one
Too many
thing.
violins.
And you don't want, that's the thing, if you throw out the balance in one area, it changes the whole piece of music that you get. And it's the same
This
in
is
the
not
plant,
helpful.
our bodies.
Carolyn, this is not helpful.
But it's back to the point you were making. We tend to try and get too reductionist and to try and find this magic bullet for everything. In reality, we're humans, we're complex beings, and everything on the planet is complex. So to just find a quick, here, we want something quick, easy to solve this problem.
Talking
It's
about
unrealistic.
the microbes, microbiome and microbes, we are only 10% human.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
As quoting that book, right? Yeah, so. And water.
Do we have time for questions from the audience? Is that the plan? Do we have a microphone to put under people? If you have a question for the panel, put your hands up. And a microphone, oh yes. And a microphone will be on its way to you. Keep your hand in the air. What? Is he your brother-in-law? Yes, sir.
He's my handyman. So I'm a father to a 7-year-old daughter, and we live in Christchurch City. And I've heard a lot of talk about how she should be playing with soil because that exposes her to microbes and builds up her immune system. On the other hand, I also know that urban soils can be really rich in lead and arsenic. Now that leaves me with a conundrum. Do I let her play with that soil and ingest it as kids do, or do I try and get her to wash her hands and live in a completely sterile environment?
It's a very, very good question. It encapsulates the dilemma of the modern world. Who's going to answer that?
Move to the country.
No, stop it. He's not going to move to the country. Somebody with a better answer.
You should probably test your soil.
I mean, this is perfectly reasonable. You don't let your kids play in the dirt because the dirt's probably poisonous these days. And yet, you let the kids play with the dirt and it improves their immunity and the blah-de-blah. It's just we're stuck here, aren't we? Who's got a better answer than move to the country?
I'm not sure if it's a better answer, but maybe a more practical one. You can test your soil. I'm sure you know this, Nick. There's a place in New Zealand, actually, anyone can dig up soil from their backyard and send it in for testing, and it'll tell you the concentrations of heavy
Oh,
metals.
God. Some things you just
Soil
don't know, you don't want to know, right? There goes the value of the house. Next question.
I fully agree with Dick, and if he ran the soil test and it's not dangerous, we should promote that playing with math and play with microbiomes and the soil and all the other parts of the system as well to create that eustress response that enable us to survive and keep living.
Next question.
So with your discussion around modern seed varieties being less nutritious and dense and being grown for yield, that pops a question into my head about being a young family who's growing all of their own food, getting seeds and seedlings, and potentially not having the outcomes that I'd like from the food that I choose to grow based on what's available. So how do I, as somebody who's trying to make the right choices, then make choices that would be best for our family by choosing the right seed sources or seedlings from Mitre 10?
I don't know if we have a lot of choice in this as consumers, I'm sorry to say. This kind of sounds almost like a psychology question, though, Julia.
What I can say, and it's not going to answer your question exactly, I don't think, but what I can say is that I think that I'd rather we didn't fall into this big dark hole thinking that even if we eat well, we're not going to be healthy, because we're going a long way towards changing your health and your mental health and your physical health if you go from eating the foods that are mostly more ultra-processed to eating real food. So the fact that your family is growing food is fantastic, and that the research does show that when people change their diet, their health does improve. And so I really want to emphasize that I appreciate that yes, there are issues with the soil, yes, they're more nutrient deficient, but you will make a difference to your health if you go from an ultra-processed food diet, which I don't know if that's where you started, probably not, but going from that to real food. So people who are eating that diet, which is many, many, many people in this country, doing that shift will improve their health.
And I also think when you're growing in your backyard, it's quite different to growing to a crop being pushed through to get it out as quickly as possible.
That's the issue. So if it's the seed source that's the issue, and we're trying to do our very best, how do we select the seed sources that will do the best?
And there's heritage seeds, but it's not all. I mean, I think this is the tricky thing. It's not blanket, and this is where it's complex. And some varieties are, have been done for yield, but it's not all. So it's not a simple this or that.
Yeah, and I don't think we should blame the seed companies and all of that. They were done for a particular reason. Yeah, it just happened that now we say, well, we shouldn't have gone that direction, or we should have gone that far. But even if you're going to go to those seeds, it's simple. Just pick something. Your garden should be rainbow with multiple colors, and that it's chemically explained by the colors, even multiple aromas. And we got data that, for example, cows can absorb phytochemicals that come from the aroma in 30 seconds, which enhance the antioxidant capacity and reduce oxidative and physiological stress. So if your garden, of course, combined with a big steak, is going to, if you're going to have a garden, make sure that you have plenty of colors and plenty of flowers, because that, independently of the seed source, will guarantee that you have a variety and diversity of functional phytochemicals that are associated with health benefits.
Quick question from myself, because I clearly haven't had enough time. Why is everybody banging on about heritage apples? What's so great about heritage apples?
So again, they've got higher amounts of some of these phytochemicals that have particular health benefits, and including.
Do they?
Yes.
And
We've
so
measured.
why do the commercial apples have fewer phytochemicals.
So, yield's one of them, but also some of those phytochemicals have slightly more astringent or stronger
Right.
flavours. So the emphasis has been bred for yield sweeter, and that's come at the expense of some of those. So they've just eliminated them from a lot of the modern varieties.
But that's a scientific thing, is it? As opposed to, oh, those beautiful heritage apples.
Yeah.
It's not nostalgia, it's proper science.
It's solastalgia.
What? What is it?
It's solastalgia.
What is solastalgia?
It's the feeling of missing home, being homesick when you're at home.
Yes.
That's solastalgia. I'm writing an article about that,
Are you?
by the way.
So that's very nice.
Stay tuned.
Next question.
Yeah.
So many hands up. Yes.
Can I just answer that apple one? I developed an allergy to apples and other stone fruits. Unexpected.
Apples aren't stone fruits.
No, but apples and some stone fruits.
Right.
Now, when I was talking to a doctor at another event, he was saying that because the allergy suddenly came on, and I'd eaten apples and these fruits all my life. He said that as a result of modern horticultural processes and changing the apples and fruits that we were eating to give higher yields, better yields, all the rest of it, those developments had changed the proteins in those fruits. And because those proteins had changed, they were at a higher concentration, and I'm not the only one, my body couldn't tolerate those protein concentrations anymore. I can eat, there was an apple around when I was much younger called a stoma. I can eat as many stoma apples as I want because they haven't been modified or adapted or changed over the decades. If you give me a Rayburn, you ring an ambulance. And that is what I have found over the past 25 odd years that I suddenly developed this allergy from.
That's so interesting.
I grow an apricot tree at home. It's an old apricot tree. I can eat those. I cannot eat the modern varieties of apricots.
Wow. That seems a quite extreme example of what somebody's been talking about.
There's a process.
Huh? Yes. Sir.
Thank you. A question for Julia and Carolyn. That astounding fact you began with, Julia, 50% of our young people with mental challenges. I think we're all worried about that.
I know. We should be worried about it. It's astronomical. And it's not just the food environment, and maybe next time you'll do technology.
So many things. No, but
question.
thank you for raising that because...
No, I have a question. Yes. And it's in line with your very first question, Kim, identifying the villain.
Yes.
So, we've been talking about the depletion of nutrient inputs, probably from commercial drivers, one way or another. Volume and quantity and how it looks and selling a lot and making farms viable. At that same time, running parallel to this, and my question is what your thoughts are on the other perhaps villain in the room, is artificial inputs such as sprays. In my own work, I've witnessed 16 to 20 herbicides, pesticides and fungicides going on to human consumption crops in close proximity to market time. And so where are we on the toxicity spectrum as being perhaps one of the villains in the room, along with depleted nutrients?
Do you know how to answer that? I mean, I can only say one little bit to that.
Okay,
I'll start. The only thing I know that around some of the challenges with things like the herbicides or glyphosate is that my understanding is that they've also been used as chelators. And so if they're mineral chelators and they can strip the minerals out of the plants.
Say that again.
they're chelators, and so they can strip the minerals out of the
Chelators,
plants,
right.
and so reduce the mineral content of the plants, and so in doing so, that can be detrimental to the health of the plant. That's my understanding, that that's one thing that they can do. So by the using of them, that is contributing to the big problem of the depletion of the nutrients, both in the plant and it can also happen in the soil. But I'm sure there are, I mean, this is where we don't talk to the psychologist about that. It's just what I've learned.
It would be hardcore toxicity.
Yes.
Working its way into a food chain.
Well, Hadee
and I
probably has views about this. I mean, you've looked at toxicity uptake by plants. Any views on this?
Carolyn, did you want to?
I was just going to say, I mean, we've got better in that regard. So now we're a lot better about withholding times. And one of the things that is potential is that effects carry on over generations. So sometimes some of these things maybe have been set up for the generation that we've got now, that were set up from when they were in the womb, and exposure to toxins, you know, not optimal nutrition at that early stage has set their bodies up to start at a low point. And I mean, again, it's back to this whole complexity, the interactions between the long-term effects. Yeah.
We are constantly told that the sprays that we employ on our foodstuffs do not show up on the foodstuffs when we buy them in the supermarket. Is that correct, Hadee?
I do not test foods in the supermarket. I do not know the answer to that.
Do they uptake toxicity?
Well, it depends on the chemicals, I think, and I guess to kind of add to what you both have said, like the issue with chemicals and toxicity, there's so many chemicals, there's thousands of chemicals that we use in our food systems, and because of the sheer quantity of them, it's very hard to attribute specific negative effects on health to specific chemicals. There's just too many around, and there's too many interactions that can occur, and there's confounding factors. I mean, I think we could definitely advocate for minimising our chemical use if we want to make a difference.
So there's the total diet study that is done now regularly that does check in terms of some of those toxins, residues, and in most cases, as you say, the food is clear of them now, but historical effects, we don't know what carries on, and the broader interactions. So it can be clear now, but were they, you know, in the past, and what are those long-term effects?
Sorry, no idea. Persistent arm raised over there. Oh, okay.
Right, one for Pablo. Tell me about the diet of the animals and how that might have changed their behaviour.
Thank you. By the way, John is a sponsor in our farm, so it could be quite biased. So, but we've seen from an animal well-being point of view, in all the ruminants that we got here in New Zealand, except for the wild ones.
Except for the what?
The wild ones.
Wild ones.
And I mean sheep, dairy cows, beef cattle, deer, that offering diverse diet, not diversity for the sake of it, functional diversity by design, phytochemically, knowing what you want to provide, but also provide them the opportunity to choose, right? To have choice. The animal can express their own individuality and fulfill their own requirements. No animal had the same exact diet. We have proven metabolomically that those animals have markers that are associated to the reduction of oxidative physiological stress and some indications of mental well-being that is transferred to their tissue and some of those into the blood of humans. But we've seen, for example, in our integral health dairy farm, that even our cows, they sleep differently. They just lay on the ground, look bloated, instead of underneath waiting to be threatened by a predator, which be my student following them.
Don't break the news that they're about to die.
But they also walk lower to the milking shed. We also have seen that we can not theoretically, practically, the work of one of my former PhD students, Connor Garrett, feeding mom diversity and rich phytochemical diet reduce fetal stress as compared to dietary monotony of ryegrass or lucerne. So mom was happier, the fetus from the get-go of life was happier, or have a metabolomic profile that indicate that they're having a really good time. But that's proven and published, so hopefully that answered your question, John. Thank you for asking that.
Yes, thank you.
I didn't give John this question.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what I've heard tonight is that we've got a massive problem. My question to the panel is, if you had a magic wand and you could do one thing, what one thing would you do, without obviously any recourse to yourself? What one thing would each one of the panel members do to maybe change this huge situation that we've got, that we're facing? Thank you.
Hadee.
Well, I think...
I was just going to go down the line.
Well, I mean, I kind of answered this before, I think, when I said that we
Right,
need
I
to be
thought
using
I'd
our
asked
soils more
it before.
efficiently.
You asked it so much better, though.
We need to understand what's in our soils and what soils are suited to better agriculture than others, and we need to have a better understanding of the way that nutrients and micronutrients act in our soils to better influence the nutritional quality of our food, if we can.
Pablo.
Well, first of all, we need to acknowledge that this is not the key problem of humanity. I think the key problem of humanity is to know that there are other peoples in the world that suffer hunger and undernutrition. So we first need to distribute nutrients better. Once we get that done, we just need to focus on what they're feeding. We don't need to talk about nutrition anymore. We need to talk about nourishment. So when we talk about nourishment, that is the holistic approach of involve every component of the system. And the way to do that, again, is establishing that dialogue. There is no conventional agriculture. There is no regenerative agriculture. There are people that want to produce food, nutrients, and medicine. And we need to keep talking about that and see how we can work all together, not only to feed the people, but heal the people through the land.
Carolyn.
We really need to focus on educating our children to then eat the right foods, and started at that really early stage and getting people to be really driven by what's important for their health.
Beautiful. I'm going to go even earlier, and I'm going to say that we need to get it right in pregnancy. And there's so much data that shows that what mom eats during pregnancy influences the mental health outcomes of her children. Just I'll stick to that, but we know that it can influence other health outcomes as well. So if we can get it right in pregnancy, there are overseas programs where they make sure that moms eat real whole foods during pregnancy, and that has this flow-on effect, not only in terms of her mental health, or the birth outcomes, lower likelihood of preterm birth, but it also has a flow-on effect in terms of the reading abilities of the child. They're less anxious, they're less aggressive, they have less attentional problems, their reading scores are better. So if we can start to focus in on making sure that mums are really well nourished during pregnancy, then I think we would go a long way to sort of reversing the trend where we're at right now.
And on that, Julia, to say something, those lambs that were happy from the get-go, right, provided phytochemical diversity in utero through mom, they show less neophobia, they perform better, they have lower environmental impact, and those lambs, the ewe lambs, got pregnant and transferred that to their progeny. We're talking about methylation and all of those things. So we have tools.
Exactly. And we've got data where we gave mums extra nutrients during pregnancy, and we were stunned by the improvement in the birth outcomes. No low birth weight babies, less likely to be premature, less hemorrhaging for postnatally with mums, less infant resuscitation, at birth. And also those infants are just better regulated. And so we found that they had better motor control, better affect control, better orientation to their environment in those early weeks of life. So getting it right, I mean, the lambs and the infants born to their mums that are nutritionally nourished really do tell us a good story that we should really be paying attention to.
What time do we need to stop? 15:15, good. Another question there.
Hello. Keep talking. Okay, we're back. A few years ago, I developed a chemical toxicity. So a lot of what you've talked about tonight, I've already implemented. So I'm growing my own organic meat. I've got my own orchard in with heritage trees. I don't spray them. I'm drinking water from my bore, so there's no chemicals added to it. I'm doing all those things right. But Hadee mentioned about the buying, having the land in the right place for the right fertility. That's the bit I can't do. I can't up and shift now. So I know that I've had my soil tested and I know it is deficient. So what can we do when we've already got our property, like our deep-rooted apple trees and those kind of things? Is there anything we can do or any ideas here so that we are getting a fulfilled diet?
Well, when I talk about using land in the right way, in the right place, I guess I really have in mind more intensive agriculture. I'm guessing that that's not what you've got. What are your deficiencies, out of interest?
Taking my thing away. I'm trying to remember, but selenium actually work. Can you remember? No. Sorry.
Yeah, so selenium is one that you probably won't be able to correct in New Zealand. Like, most of our soils are actually really low in it, and that's where we have to look to our food to fortify
couple of
food that we
Brazil nuts gives you selenium.
Yeah, but how do we know that those Brazil nuts were grown in order that the selenium is in the Brazil nuts? Just sorry to interrupt.
And I mean, this is again a driver for more testing to be done on
I have
food.
to test my Brazil nuts now. Nothing can be trusted, is what I'm saying.
And having a food system where nutrients are valued and measured and put on labels.
Okay. Sorry. Continue your dialogue.
Oh, that was basically it. Yeah. It's very hard to correct some deficiencies in New Zealand, such as selenium, so that's where you probably have to look to.
Are you feeling better now, though?
Yeah, 1,000 times better.
Well.
And I got a blood test recently, and I was deficient in some other things, so I am now supplementing with those.
Whatever they are, you can't remember.
No, those ones, yeah.
Right.
Silica is one.
Silica? Yeah. Oh, okay.
And yeah, definitely again another increase in health.
Good. But you're still, trying to max it out. Okay. Yes. Next question, please.
Hello. So what I'm hearing is we started talking about soil, and it's really got back to, it's the people problem. It's how society functions. And so my question is similar to the gentleman's back there, but it's not what would your top thing be. It was if you could create a hierarchy of how society needs to look at the big picture and start shifting their mindset to then solve all of these, domino effect problems that are all adding to one another, what would that look like?
I don't know.
Well, it just started at university. That's where we educate. That's what we inform. That's where we form people.
So other than academics, though, I am an academic, so I get that. But there's a lot of people in this country and the wider global picture that either poo-poo on academics or they don't see the value in it. So to the commons, what would that hierarchy look like?
In other words, how would you make academia and expertise affect the broader society?
How would you make it accessible for those that have societal norms ingrained in them that, they're thinking we need to change processed consumption of processed foods.
Yeah.
But then, you know, the whole equity and economy.
No,
side of
exactly. I
things
mean,
comes
that is the problem we've been wrestling with all evening, really.
Yeah.
How do you get this
in. So
into...
what's the hierarchy?
Well, I don't know about hierarchy.
What's at the top? And academia has come up. Have I stumped the panel?
I think we also need to switch people's thinking to really thinking about preventative measures rather than, you know, solving the problem at the end and taking a pill, you know. We need to shift to the fence at the top of the cliff rather than the ambulance at the bottom and changing.
But that's what the question.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Let us avoid the metaphor. But she wants to know how we're going to put that fence at the top of the cliff.
I know, that's tough.
If you were to make an action plan, how would that look?
I think sometimes one thing that overwhelms me as an academic is that change is just so slow. And I was always told that it's 17 years between when you make a discovery and it's implemented. Well, I'll tell you that's wrong, because I've been going for more than 17 years. So it is really, really slow to change our direction. It's like a Titanic. And I decided that rather than looking at trying to change the world, I decided from my perspective that I would be more fulfilled if I looked at my little environment. And so my little environment is the University of Canterbury. And so one thing that I developed was a course that's called the Science and Practice of Wellbeing. And students come into that thinking they're going to do a psychology course, but little do they know what they're going to do is I'm going to teach them life skills. And that it's not about the academic content per se, but it's about me teaching them some tools to make them more resilient.
Ooh, sneaky.
Because then it's very sneaky. Because I realize that half of them have got mental health problems, at least. And so I've got this audience, rather than as a clinical psychologist one-to-one, I have 300 students that I can influence every year. So maybe we, trying to find that solution to everything, maybe we do need to be looking on our communities and saying, what difference can we make in our little small community? Because there you have a bit more control. When you start to think about trying to change governments, I really lose the plot.
So you look at it indirectly. You shift your focus to the side.
That's what I've tried to do.
All
and then
right.
it's like it's bringing, I thought about it from the perspective of bringing the blue zones to Canterbury. So the blue zones are places in the world where we know they live longer. And why do they live longer?
A certain amount of skepticism about the blue zones.
There is skepticism, but there is a running theme amongst them, which is that they move naturally. They have wine at 5. I don't know about that one, but they have a sense of purpose. They are socially connected. They eat from the land. They eat real food. So all of those things we know are good for our well-being. So whether or not there's debate around whether or not the old guy is 101 or he's 93, I appreciate that there's some controversy there. But those principles are things that we can bring to anywhere, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do in my little microcosm. I can't change New Zealand, but maybe I can change that. Maybe that'll have ripple effects.
Cultivez votre jardin, in other words. Next question.
Hey, you just mentioned before, Julia, that food can have a claim curing diseases. And I just wanted to ask you, what do you think needs to be done to a doctor prescribing some blueberries or meat to get to that point? Here.
Where's the person? And was that a question for me?
Yes.
Oh, so can you say it again? I couldn't see you. So I was
Yeah, sorry. Now, you just mentioned before that food products can have a claim to cure certain diseases.
Yeah.
And what do you think is stopping the doctors to prescribe certain food products, and what needs to be done to get to that point?
I think one of the big things that's a huge challenge, and I'm sure there are physicians in the room, is that nutrition was simply not a part of medical education. Very, very small a part. And when it comes to mental health, probably nothing. Just like as a clinical psychologist, I got no training about the importance of food, and now I kind of go, what? Why is that not part of the curriculum? And so it's slowly changing a little bit here, but that's the norm. So if we can get that kind of education of nutrition into the medical schools, which is certainly some some countries are trying to change that and make sure that's part of the curriculum, then that means they have that knowledge. At the moment, the pharmaceutical industry really does play a huge influence in terms of the education of physicians. So you do what you're taught. And so that does play a role. So if you're taught nutrition is irrelevant, then you're going to ignore or you're going to dismiss the research, for example, that we've been doing with supplements because you were taught that supplements was expensive urine. So that does need to change at that education level. And when physicians do get engaged in more holistic and lifestyle approaches, they reap the rewards in that their patients get better.
Are there any physicians here? And
what
would you like to respond? Were you trained that nutrition was important?
Not directly, but I'm an observer of life, and it's blindingly obvious to me that nutrition is, core to people's well-being and a whole.
Yes.
Yeah, it forms a central part of my practice.
I think you would be different from many of your colleagues, though, in all fairness.
Do you think you are?
But I wouldn't generalise.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there, I can't see whose hand is up or who's got the mic, you just have to start talking. Yeah.
Well, I would like to thank you all for all your insight. And I'd like to know what, as people, we can do tomorrow when we wake up to help with this big problem, like an action or many actions we could all do to contribute.
Well, first of all, from my point of view, related to farming, if we are asking the farmers to produce healthier food, we should be able, when we can, to pay the extra so we can stimulate the farmers to do that. So that would be the first action. If we want to, if we know, even if the labels say, well, this has a little bit more of omega-3, and we understand that we even perceive that it's healthier, but it costs 5% more, that would help farmers to keep producing. So if we help farmers, the farmers will help you. That is the first action that I would suggest.
Anybody else?
I just thought we had a discussion earlier about that we were exporting all our good food. So your idea of giving the farmer a bit more so he produced it, would any of it stay here?
That's right. I'm not sure we have that power.
I think we do have that power. I think that just has to do with how the fiscal levers that influence exports. It's got to be solvable. We got the vote. It's solvable.
The supermarket,
Yeah.
the cheapest food, if you're on a really, really tight budget, you look around the supermarket, the cheap food is the shit food.
Yeah.
You don't want to be feeding your kids.
No, I think, thank you for backing up my deep pessimism about society and the human race.
Just a worry though, isn't it? Because if it's got a lot of sugar and salt, isn't that child's palate gonna
Yes.
just want
Yes.
sugar and salt?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yes.
the good
Yeah.
stuff, like
Yes.
good old porridge, no, don't want to.
Which is not cheap. You will keep eating, and you'll end up spending more money on that, buying yourself a ticket for type 2 diabetes.
Yes, that's right, but nobody thinks like that.
That's what we need
They
to
say-
establish a dialogue and educate the people.
Here, kid, shut up and eat this horrible piece of ultra-processed food. They're not going to go, oh, no. But the child, when the child is 25 years old, it's not going to be very well. People don't think like that. People are suffering out there, right? We haven't got that kind of luxury here. That's what worries me. Question.
Hi, my question's to Pablo. With regard to, you mentioned before, when you put cattle on regenerative and diverse food, they performed better. Now, obviously, we have legs and we can move and choose our food, but we're choosing badly. Cows can move and choose their food. Plants can't. and therefore has anyone considered looking at or studying, and I know there's been a lot of studies globally, around the use of fulvic acids, which actually allow plants to choose what they uptake, number one, and also biology, which moves minerals into plants?
Now, first of all, I want to clarify that what we do is not regenerative agriculture. Although I look at that with a lot of love, we do science, agroecological science, and how to transition to agroecological approaches. That's a science. Of course, it's quite appealing for regenerative practices and not appealing for whatever it is conventional, right? Now, the cow thing, when we offer them not only diversity, functional in space and time, if you want me to get technical, you allow them to choose and express their own individuality, and they move from plant to plant to fulfill their own immediate needs, right? And the action that that cow will take depends on what has passed to her, what is in front of her, and what she expects from her in the future, like we do. Now, whether the plants can move or not, depends how you look at it. Do the plants feel? They sense, they communicate, they take care of their own progeny. That's science as well. About the other technical question of formic or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
First off, thank you all very much. Kim, I'm a little disappointed. Now I'll clarify that. What happened to the boldness? So one quick thing, I want to agree with Julia on where is the hope in the room. Please, everyone, keep that energy. But question, not statement, I don't want to get shot. If greed responds to strength rather than altruism or logic even sometimes, how do you move the lever at a grand scale? I'll leave that to the room or the board. Quit bickering over the little stuff. Talk about the big stuff for a moment.
I thought we were talking about big stuff. What would your version of big stuff be? We're trying to change the nutritional value of the food in the entire world.
Again, I agree it's a human problem, but around the conversation with a certain member of parliament.
Well, you want to overthrow capitalism?
I don't know. Do we need to?
I think so.
How do we do it?
I've got no idea. I'm up for suggestions, though, at this point. We have time for one more question.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really interested to know...
Mic up to mouth, please.
I'm really interested to know how many people in the room have a vegetable garden or grew up with a vegetable garden.
Well, which? How many people have a vegetable garden right now?
Not your average population.
Amazing. Oh my goodness.
We're not a representative bunch.
Great question.
And that's the thing, we end up preaching to the choir when we need to establish a dialogue, face the contrary. So you don't agree with me, let's drink a beer, let's see how we can work together.
Sorry, did you have a follow-up question to that? Because Pablo is quite right, given that we're not a representative bunch, there needs to be a way of breaking out of this particular bubble.
Because don't you feel that all of this meeting is preaching to the choir?
Yeah.
So that's why, again, we need to establish dialogue. We need to break our differences in even how we think and say, let's have a coffee. By the way, a phytochemical that affects right? Or tea, green tea especially, blue zones. And say, it's why you don't agree with me. Or let's have a beer, a lot of carbs, but it's healthy. and sit and see how we can work together.
Or overthrow capitalism.
Is that romantic? Yes, it is. But if we keep preaching to the choir, nothing will happen.
Did you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I'd like to know how we can possibly influence younger people to have their own gardens.
Oh. Did you have a garden when you were young, though?
I grew up on an orchard, and I have 4 children. Out of those 4 children, I have half a child who has a vegetable garden.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a young person thing. It's an older person thing, gardens, right?
But surely some of this has to start in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who here in this room knows that mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell? But we know nothing about soil science or well-being. Like, we don't learn that from an early age.
No, that's quite right.
Maybe we should bring some of this into our classrooms so we can be exposed to
How
this
many
knowledge
teachers
at
in
an
the
early
room?
age.
Hands up if you're a teacher. Thank God.
There's a program, I'm not a teacher by the way, but there is a program called the Garden to Table, and it's amazing. There's only a few schools, it's grown, but the schools that do it, I remember my boy as a 6-year-old coming back and saying, I've got to make dinner for everybody at home, and I've got to make it from the garden. So we went, we foraged parsley, we found some old silver beet, and you know, we had a little bit of stuff, we sort of came and we took photos and we made dinner. So they're doing this at school, and they are learning about soil, and they are putting meals together. And, you know, they are growing up with some knowledge. It's not everybody, it's not every school. It's a really good place to start in the schools, I think.
So if we start on the, I'm aiming for capitalism, of course, but if we started small, then it would spread out over time.
I'll say something. I look after the Lincoln Community Gardens, the Lincoln Environtown. We have kindergartners come to the gardens. They love it. It's their highlight of the year. They come once a month. We have girl guides, we have brownies, we have cubs, all sorts of things. Peter and Lincoln can find out about gardening and soil. We are very blessed with Lincoln.
Thank you.
On that note.
I think we probably have to wrap it up unless somebody's got this brilliant question that...
I think it's wrap-up time.
Wrap up.
Am I on? A very positive way to finish with gardening.
Thank you.
As an organic gardener myself, and having the rainbow colours, you can see what sort of body it gives you. But I think that's down to the barley that's in the beer that's lost all the good nutrients because of the sprays. Well, we've learnt a lot tonight, a hell of a lot. I know I have, and from the questions I've got, I'm sure we all have. The paradox of being human. Sir Albert Howard, history will condemn the chemical fertilisers to be the greatest misfortune for generations of humankind. Well, I think, Julia, that is coming home to bear with the anxiety levels of our young people, which is extremely sad. Our soils, the negative toxicity of excess micronutrients is a real concern. Pablo, I am the land and the land is me. Linkage to soil, plant, animal disease and human health. And it takes us right back to the biodiversity, soils, transferring good nutrients into our meat. So they've certainly got the linkages there. Caroline, the brain struggles without nutrients. Soil health links to nutrients. Soil microbiome links to gut microbiome, and as we are seeing that as well. And it's very hard to get to potential when we haven't got good nutrient-rich foods for our children. And the last nutrition survey, being 2008, is an absolute disgrace. And we all need to talk to our MPs about doing something about that. The other things we've heard about today is, as Julia said, brain hunger, nutrient insufficiency. We can't build healthy brains on nutrient-deficient diets. Maybe KFC and Macca's have got a lot to answer for. Our plant breeds, as we've heard, are taking away the phytochemicals we need. We need to go back to the places like King Seeds to get our seeds in our garden and look to our heritage plants, as many as to do. And a few zingers from tonight. Better soil is better food, better guts, better brain. It's a Julia, well done. The skin is the important bit, so remember that when you peel your apple. And Kim, just take a pill. Well, the pill appears to be the pea. Eat plenty of green peas, that's the pill. We have heard that we are exporting our good food, our best beef for their hamburgers. Isn't that something sad? So an integrated approach to food production, we need to talk about nourishment. A very sage word, talk about nourishment, not just food, but how we are nourished and what we eat. Ultra-processed foods are the 21st century cigarette. Now that is scary. And I just think that I'll take up what Julia said here. We need to be naked for half an hour in the midday sun. I do hope you've all got reasonable, fences around your gardens. Otherwise, it could be a bit distressing.
That's the purpose of the garden.
I'd just like to finish to say that really we should be eating the liver out of the mare's stock from on her farm. Because, she's using seaweed fertilisers, she's not using the nasty crap. And as we've said, a gram of liver is a huge amount of vitamin D or C or whatever it was. So I do know that the pub down the road does a very nice lamb's fry and bacon. And they do a pensioner rate as well, not to mention. So on that note, thank you all, panel, for being here, and Kim once again, and the panel for a really educational night. And thank you all for being so good and not too many statements. Fantastic. Well, I've told them to stand down the firing squad. We just need to remember that tonight we are here because our sponsors are Lincoln University, the Selwyn District Council, the Rata Foundation, Bioeconomy Science Institute, Mainfert, Intelligro, and Roots, Shoots and Fruits. So a big thank you to all our sponsors to make it happen. And a major thank you to Lincoln Envirotown for doing it again. Well done, team. Fantastic. We look forward to next year's topic. Ka kite.
And there's also a big thank you to Lincoln Envirotown Trust for organising it, and the student volunteers tonight. And I'd like to thank the members of the organising committee, Fiona Bellinger, Dave Fitzjohn, Ralph Scott, Nick Lato, Peter Rahman, Katie Browning, Craig Edison, Jürgen Espachutz and Vincent de Soliers. And we have a hot topic for next year, which is artificial intelligence and the environment. And that's not only bad, so it's not only the energy it uses and the e-waste it produces, it's also the efficiency gains that we get and the healthier food that we're going to produce using it. So until next year, and we just please thank the panellists and Kim again.